Alright, sweet. Finally got my Shin Godzilla to do his official review.
Steve, why does everybody hate me?
Well, what do you mean, Shin? I just recently got you. You look okay to me right now.
When you weren't in the room, I went on your Facebook account.
Okay, well, that's asking for trouble.
And everybody on there said that my paint job is fugly, that people should get refunds on me.
Well, Shin, I won't know that till I go over all of you. Because some people get kind of drastic online, and it's not like this line has been perfect from the initial get-go and through the production run anyways.
You're just trying to make me feel better.
Oh no, seriously. I don't think people have quite forgotten our good old little friend here.
Hey, you guys. They think I have problems.
Hey Rangers, welcome to Super Important Views. My name's Steve.
My name's Arnes.
And today I'll be going over the SH MonsterArts Shin Godzilla, or you may know him as Shin Godzilla, Godzilla Resurgence, Godzilla 2016, the newest Godzilla.
2016, Steve.
Yes. And this is a import from Japan because there was literally no way really to get stateside unless you go through a third party, which makes this guy stupid expensive. Initially when I got mine, he was $99 and like some change plus the shipping. Finally getting this review out because it took them literally 3 weeks to get this thing to my house. Even though Mia shipped 2 weeks after this guy and showed up the exact same day.
They just knew which one we wanted more, Steve.
I don't think they did.
Yeah, they did.
I don't think so.
That's why we got Mia faster.
No, definitely no.
You want me to stab your box, Steve?
But the box is already banged up enough as it is. You can't hurt it anymore.
And why are you reviewing it from the back, Steve?
Alright, well, anyways, without further ado, for his packaging, I consider this the front of the package. Granted, you guys will see the back here in a second, but for the front here, you have a nice image of Godzilla, the figure inside of the packaging, looking all menacing, slightly looking down. We'll get to that in a little bit. MonsterArts Godzilla 2016, Shin Godzilla, Tamashii Nation Bandai, and some copyright stuff. On the top of the packaging, some translucent plastic here, Shin Godzilla 2016. Sides of the packaging, just transitions into the spines. I also want to point out, very reminiscent of the poster, which is why I really love this part in particular. On the side here, you have him in a bunch of dynamic poses, shows you what he can do. He can bend over stupid far. And then for the back of the packaging.
Front packaging.
Back. You want to know why I say it's the back of the packaging? Because on all Tamashii boxes, the tape is always on the back right here.
Guys,
so
let them know in the comments
this
how
is
wrong
the front.
he is.
Because also on the back, you have the description here in the comments like they do on the other back of the packagings.
Oh, front.
But on the back, you can see Shin Godzilla inside of the packaging. Looks pretty cool overall. Like, it's just a red box, but it works for me. Works really well for the character.
I gotta, like, honestly tell you, I'm surprised how big this box is. Like, I did not expect it. When I opened it, I thought those were the two Mias in the original box.
Yeah, we did an unboxing on the Geek Chest, and Arnes failed to tell me that this guy actually came in, because it still said he's in Japan somewhere, so we've just been waiting on this guy forever. And yeah, this box is for jive freaking ganic, but you guys will see why in a second here. And on the bottom, you got Godzilla roaring upside down and some Lego mumbo jumbo. So let's get him open up out of his cardboard prison. Alright, so now that we got our Shin Godzilla opened up out of his cardboard prison, first and foremost, this figure for a MonsterArts, especially a Godzilla, is stupid huge. He's actually a pretty tall individual here, but look at that tail.
Size does matter, Steve, just so you know.
But that's not what my wife...
Size
you know what?
does matter.
I'm gonna just get into it. But what's really impressive about this tail here is if you articulate it upwards, it stays upright. Which is really good to see because in the film, his tail is like almost always like flailing up in the air somewhere. You never actually see it like laying down. Which is also, it doesn't really pose very well if you try to do it. Because the end's still gonna be sticking up pretty much no matter what. But it's still pretty articulated, except for right here, mine's starting to loosen up a bit, but if you have it touching the table here, it'll hold its pose, which is really, really nice to see. But he does not sadly come with any accessories, which is actually a little bit of a letdown, because I really would have loved to see his atomic breath, or some form of it, because technically, since he has all the red paint here, it might have been nice for him to maybe come with like the flame breath kind of coming out of his mouth, a la the Gamera 96 figure. Like, they almost could have probably just reused that and just retooled the bottom a little bit. It would have been really cool just to be able to insert it into his mouth. Because with how stupid huge his mouth is, I really wish I could put something in it. You know? Alright, so for a closer look at Shin Godzilla's details, head sculpt actually looks really nice. Pretty reminiscent of the film. Other than, it definitely, you could tell that his lower jaw and upper jaw are definitely fairly segmented. Which I kind of wish the mouth maybe closed a little bit tighter. But still looks really nice overall. You get that very burnt leather skin that was very iconic for that Godzilla, because it kind of harkens back to the reason why Godzilla had those wrinkling effects to begin with in 1954, is to sort of replicate the burns that radiation victims have. And this guy definitely looks like he's been through the ringer. But his paint job is primarily in a very black charcoal color, which you can see a lot of red splashing here and there. Especially on the top portion of his neck here is definitely a little bit redder than I'd really like it to be. Because you can see here, the base of his neck is in the same kind of glossy charcoal black that a lot of the body is. This is just mainly red, and then same with his chin, and then you have the glossy black for the top part of his head.
Isn't that what like everyone's talking about, the whole redneck thing?
Yeah, some people have it better than others. This isn't really all that bad. Like, with all the lighting on it, it definitely shows a little better, but it's standing on my shelf because I already put it in my display case. You barely notice it on this guy. Because what's supposed to be is there's supposed to be like red lines in the inner portion of the neck here where the muscle is. And then you'd have some up here, but instead it just kind of has some red just kind of splashed everywhere. And then for his eyes, if you can see it on mine, is on this side of the head, it's looking down. So it's getting ready to stomp on some people, some citizens of Tokyo. While the other side is looking straight at the camera right now. So,
Don't you make fun of him?
when you have him looking straight at the camera, kind of looks like he's been hit over that with a baseball bat a little bit. Like, we should just have some of the Dorats just floating around his head, a la Tweety style. And my little theory is possibly it could be for posability purposes, because you can have him looking this side to look downwards, and this side, he looks straight. From the front, it's going to look goofy, but you can't really win both ways. But I think in terms of it being shifted, it gives you more options in terms of display factor, depending on which way you have them looking. And again, it just could be QC issues with everybody, but it sounds kind of weird that everybody has that issue. But the details for the inside of his mouth, oh boy, they did not spare any expenses there.
No,
Like, look at that throat hole. Oh my god.
So red, it looks like he actually ate someone.
Yeah, I know. You even have like some of the lining here you see for the base of his mouth. Because in the film he didn't have a ton. Because he didn't really need it. He doesn't eat things. So what's the use for the ton? Except for the top of the mouth has a lot of nice details there. Very glossy, very shiny and wet looking. Looks great. Teeth are painted very nicely too in this very bone coloring. And you can see that they are kind of just all over the place. On both sides, looks good. I have seen on some people they're not quite as well painted as others. I think that's like one of the parts I really lucked down on. Was that I really don't have any complaints for his mouth area there. And then you can get this thing pretty freaking wide, which is really nice. Especially for, if you can with a breath effect, you can work with pretty much anything you wanted.
Looks creepy.
But yeah, he has a really nice roar. And it's starting to move down his body. You can see his dorsal spines here. A little smaller than some of the other Godzillas, but it's very accurate for the film. Which you can see they are also very glossy black with some red splashed here and there for the highlights for the burning effect. And then if we bring it around to the back, you'll notice all that red, especially at the top part of his head. Looks like, whoa,
I'm sorry.
the skin is not quite fully formed in these little sections. God, he looks like a meat house or something. Like he just came from the butcher shop, and he was the butch.
Movie.
Which is sweet, because Godzilla's supposed to be scary, and, yeah, there's not really too much more terrifying than, exposed skin all over your back.
No wonder he's so grumpy. Can you imagine all the pain?
Yeah, especially when they drop the bombs on him, and just blood just splurts everywhere. You think, actually, they would have covered up afterwards, because he evolves throughout the movie? So you think he would have lost the red, but instead he just grew back lasers. Huh. And then coming to his chest, where you have his little trademark point here on the front of his collarbone. And then the front of his abdomen looks really nice too. The only thing is for how much red is on this Godzilla, he doesn't have any on his front. Which, in the film, he does have some like details splattered here and there on this guy. which you don't actually see on this version of Shin Godzilla. The Bandai vinyl, you can see the red there, and it looks really good. And I think if they would have added that to the body here, it definitely would have helped to add a little bit to the detail. But the mold is definitely there, because you can see it with all the inner workings of the skin kind of just stretching over this front bone of his chest right there. Looks nice. And then for his arms, you have his giant shoulders with his tiny little hands, his little T-Rex hands.
Still ugly.
And for the paint job on his nails, one is definitely bone color. The other one kind of looks gray.
What? I just noticed that.
Yeah, the one is definitely painted pretty nicely. The other one is a little off color, because I don't think they added as much paint to it, so the black's definitely showing through there, so it's kind of discoloring it a little bit.
Lazy.
A little bit. It's more of just like, I don't know, inconsistencies in the production run. Because you generally don't have, like, it's not the same person paint every single one of these. And they're kind of in a rush, so. But what's kind of cool is you can see his little finger right there. Still. So again, the mold is really, really solid on this guy. And then moving down to the base of his body with his gigantic hips. Looks really good. Very trademark Godzilla. What is not very trademark Godzilla is his T-Rex feet.
What?
Which you can also see the paint job on the nails of the toes is not very consistent either. Like this side, bone coloring looks really nice. This side, starting to fade already out of the box. So again, it's a little hit and miss. I guess it kind of helps to complement the hands because this side's kind of meh. This side looks great. And this side looks kind of meh. This side looks great. Crazy. That's where my money goes. But for the feet, the molding does still look really awesome. We have that little toe kind of just coming out of the side of the foot there. Feet are done very nicely and do sit pretty level on the shelf. And I like too that his feet are really small and have that kind of arcing upward dinosaur kind of expression. And then once you hit his kneecaps, it's just like all gigantic all the time.
Wait, does he have
like he has chubby grandma legs.
Does he have two different kneecaps?
Well, no, it's just like the one's slightly more bulging than the other. And then we'll show you guys a little bit closer look at the tail, which goes on forever. Literally ever. But I do like that they still included the center little section here where you have the dorsal spines kind of raising up a little bit more than you see on most of the rest of it. Like even this section, he doesn't really have any dorsal spines at all. And what's also weird too is that like this part here is super glossy for the red and looks very bloody. And then these two parts aren't quite as bloody. This part barely has any gloss on it at all. And then we go to gloss and back up. So it's kind of weird that the segmentings look so much different between each section. Because even coming up to here, you can start noticing there's a little bit more gloss here. And then moving back up, you get a little bit more red. And then we get the tip of his tail. Which always kind of confused me on what's going on here. Because, spoiler alert, at the end of the film, there's little Godzilla people that are kind of like making their way out of this, trying to free themselves from it. But then, in certain scenes, like when he's shooting atomic breaths out of his tail, there's like a little head on here. And you can even see, bringing it around, right there, you got a little Godzilla face.
Creepy.
Which just like opened up, and then he's just like spraying atomic blast everywhere. Because you can even start to see like some of the dorsal spines forming for the new Godzilla there. But then, instead of another Godzilla coming out, it was a bunch of little ones. So I never really quite understood what was going on at the end of his tail, other than, I guess that's how he reproduces in the film, is through his tail. Because that's weird.
God, that's boring.
Just a little bit. But for the details for it, look disgusting. Like, this entire Godzilla is just gross looking in comparison to most of the other ones. They're just like standard cool giant monsters. This guy kind of creeps me out at night.
In a good way.
In a good way. Where his tail is very flesh tone. And then it has a lot of gloss over top of it to get that nice slime to it. And you can just see all those really nice molded details on the tail. It just... so much work was really put into the sculpting on this. His sculpt is fantastic. Problem is, his paint job... little bit hit and miss compared to most of the other MonsterArts in the line. Also, one thing I want to bring up too about this figure is he's slightly dangerous, or at least in my opinion, because his dorsal spines to me are very pointy, very sharp, and there's a lot of edges here. And when you pick them up, when you like go to grab them like this, it feels like little serrated blades. So
It hurts like hell.
yeah, be a little careful when grabbing him. I tend to pick him up by the front of his section and hold him by the tail. I don't try to pick him up, like grasp him around, because yeah, he already started trying to stab me, and I don't appreciate my Godzilla's trying to injure me. Anyways, moving on to his articulation. His head can look down about that far, upwards about that far. I kind of wish his head could maybe look up a little bit, because the only way you can really have him looking straight up is if you open his mouth. And then you can open his mouth about that far, closes about that far. And you can kind of adjust it too, so if you want his lower jaw kind of sitting out to line up with the base of his mouth, you can accomplish that, which is really cool to see. And then his head can also lean a little bit side to side, nothing too crazy. For his shoulders, can go up about that far, down about that far. Can he rotate all the way around? Nope, almost. He sticks about there, it feels. And then you can get still a crazy amount of articulation in that shoulder. And then his arm can swing up about that far, inwards about that far. Pretty decent bend at the elbow. Hand can rotate all the way around. The hand feels like the scariest thing for me because this joint isn't very big. So that's the one thing I really don't want to play with a whole lot. But it's nice to see that his arms actually very articulated for how small they really are. His little T-Rex arms can definitely do some work. And for his waist, can lean to the side about that far. And other side about that far. He can look down, which is kind of hard because you don't really want to grab back here to push down on him. But you can get him to shift looking down about that far so you can literally look at his toes, which is really cool to see. Well, because in the film he does that whole like breathing smoke out of his mouth and then he's like and shooting beams. So it's really nice if you want to recreate that pose, he can do that. And then he straightens up about that far. And for his legs, can go outwards about that far, inwards about that far. Move out. Grabbing the dorsal spine is a bad idea. Forward about that far. Back about that far. Nice bend at the knees. Can straighten up about that far. And then bend in about that far. A little bit of a wiggle. Nothing too crazy. His foot can go side to side. Bend a little bit forward. A little bit back. His joints are really stiff though on mine. Which I like to see, but just makes me kind of worry about the little segmenting. And then for his tail, each of these are on ball joints, and they're segmented, starting right here. I couldn't really tell if that's actually a joint, but there's a joint there. So just segment there, right here, and that's segment, this, and then moving down the tail here. So his tail has a lot of posability. Swing it side to side very nicely. And it's really good to see too that again it holds its pose very nicely. Really impressed by that because like my Godzilla 2000, literally it has to lay on the table. That's all it can do. While some of my other ones like GMK, his tail can pose up a little bit more. And then there's no real rotation here at the tail because the way it's molded, it doesn't really allow that. But at the tip of the tail, I'm thinking you could probably get this to swivel a little bit. But nothing too crazy. And then a lot of really nice play here at the end.
Stop playing with it, Steve. It's disturbing.
And for some quick comparisons, here we have the SH Monster Shin Godzilla compared next to some other Shin Godzilla figures with the Bandai Vinyl Final Form, the second and third form. And here he is next to some SH MonsterArts figures with the GMK 2001 Godzilla and the 2004 Godzilla.
Quick question, Steve. How much bigger was he in the movie than the other guys?
He is the tallest Godzilla. He's a little bit larger than 2014.
Comparisons, he like towers over all of them.
Well, yeah, well, technically GMK is only like 50 meters.
Ha!
So GMK should be about here on this guy. And then he should be closer to probably around the... It's not that far off, maybe about here.
Still, though, that's just crap how big he is.
Well, it's nice to see that he scales pretty well with 2014. But most of the other Godzillas don't really scale well outside of their era. And here is compared next to some Ultraman figures with the SH Figuarts Ultraman Original and the Ultra Act Father of Ultra.
Oh, I get this comparison, Steve. You're trying to compare who has more red.
Shh. That I mainly just want to do this because actually acquired this guy.
Just want to show
I
him
want to show him off. Father of all show awesome. And finally, here he is next to some NECA Godzilla figures with the 1954 Godzilla and GMK 2001. Which, again, this monster towers over pretty much everybody.
So he's supposed to evolve from this thing, right? Pretty much is what they're saying.
No, he is his own thing. He has nothing to do with any Godzilla.
So he has no, like, everyone else from the last movies we watched.
Yeah, like the Millennium. It's like 1954, and then so many years later, we have a new Godzilla. That's not... He literally started from scratch. But anyways, just turn him sideways real quick, just so you guys can see.
The tail compare... That's not cool, Steve. Don't compare sizes, man.
Like, let's give GMK a head start. It still ain't happening. So overall, the SH MonsterArts Godzilla 2016... I overall actually really enjoyed this figure. The paint job is definitely inconsistent between him and most other SH MonsterArts releases because it's just all over the place on this guy, with the red splotches being in some spots that were not supposed to be, and there's some that's paint that's a little bit more kicked on than others. But I really like the glossy paint job that they gave to him. I've heard some people complain about that, but I really like the more wet look he has. It really helps to kind of convey what the kaiju was feeling in the movie. And he does actually come out of water, so it makes sense to me. But I love the articulation on this guy. It's actually probably one of my more favorite articulations out of most MonsterArts that we've gotten recently. Probably the next best one would be GMK. And I think his details, like the mold on this guy, is phenomenal. It's just I wish they would have spent a little bit more time perfecting the paint job on him.
My favorite thing about him, Steve, is his whole scary aspect, like the tail and all the flesh tones on him. His mouth, just like, he looks scary. And I love that. That's what Godzilla's supposed to be, right?
Yeah, he's supposed to, at least the original incarnation of him was definitely supposed to be a more terrifying kaiju. And he definitely will stand out on your shelf as being probably the most unique looking kaiju out of the bunch.
Still, I just can't get over his hands. I'm sorry, guys. I just can't.
I don't know, especially on this figure, I really don't mind the hands. Like on the Bandai vinyl, it's definitely a little dorky. but on him, it's a little bit more fitting. And in the movie, it worked really well too. Now, do I recommend him at the prices that I see him going for right now at around $200?
Can't. That's double what you paid for.
Yeah, if you could find him somewhere in Japan or somebody selling him for pretty reasonable, I would go a little higher. Because they did, like, import it and getting it stateside, it's always going to be a little bit more money. But at the $200 price range, that's a little bit hard to recommend. If you can find them for, I'm going to say $150 would be my tops.
Yeah.
Because he is a big kaiju, especially compared to most of the other guys. It's just the paint inconsistencies just hurt this guy a little bit, in my opinion. But not enough to make me deter him or want to get rid of him.
You want to sell yours, Steve?
No.
We will buy it for $150.
After I had to wait for freaking almost a month to get this guy, I'm just super excited to add to my collection. And if you guys picked him up, you'd be really excited with him as well. But what do you guys think of the SH MonsterArts Godzilla 2016? Have you picked your guys' up yet? Or is TriStar just more your thing? Please let us know in the comments. A little closer pictures of them on our website if you want to click the link in the description below. Also, the review would also have been put out a day in advance. So if you guys haven't been checking out the website, definitely go check that out periodically because we do put the reviews up there a day in advance. So if there's a review you've been really waiting for, it'll definitely show up there before it shows up on here. We also have a Patreon account if you want to help support the channel. Also link in the description below. And help us defeat those kaijus by hitting that like button, subscribe, become a ranger today, and see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.